Does anyone use Agile methodology or have heard of it?
Yeah.
So basically, I started a business about 14 years ago, and I was kind of big into digital and all that sort of stuff, and I was big into innovation and apps and startups. About 2009, I just made the complete shift to just go, let's just go down the app space. And what I started to learn from the app space is things change very, very quickly. So by the time you get your product out to market, things have actually changed since that time. So what we did was we launched an app. We launched a surfing game for Rip Curl, and we basically pitched an idea. We said this is what we want to do. They didn't have a lot of faith and a lot of belief in what we were doing. They said no one's going to buy a surfing game. People don't really use apps. Apps are a bit silly. You've got to remember in 2009, Nokia had the market share. The Apple iPhone 3G was the only one, was for the niche market. And most of the apps then were paid, and there weren't a lot of brands. In fact, we even approached Harley Davidson to actually try to pitch them to get a brand, and actually they were very positive. Something I learned about Harley Davidson, which is really interesting, is that they're actually in the same area as the Amish community. So it's sort of two different worlds coming together. And, anyway, it was actually one of the yeses that we got. And another yes we got was from the surfing brand of Rip Curl. They basically saw that we were passionate. They still had very little faith it's going to do well, so they gave us a profit share. They gave us a 50-50 profit share. So they said once we generate the revenue back from the app, from the sales back from the app, then we'll go into 50-50 split. And anyway, we signed the deal and we went on through and we worked really, really hard. We made a surfing game. It was a very popular game. It was the #1 game on the App Store in Portugal and Brazil. Very popular in the US, and it was in the top 100 apps in Australia. And because of that, we charged $4.99 for the app, and Apple takes its revenue, so $3.19, so $1.50 from every single sale of the app. So the game back then, in 2009, in 2010, was put a price on a product, put a price on a game, sell it on the App Store, and sell millions of copies, done. Then the market very quickly changed into the freemium model. So you had one free version and one paid version. Problem with that is if you gave away too much for free, you didn't actually sort of convert across to the paid version. So it didn't work for a lot of people, and there was a very there was a bit of a science and a bit of an art to actually getting the right sort of amount that you give away for free. Then after that came the in-app purchases. So basically you gave away out for free, sold millions of copies for free, and then you just hope that they love it so much they buy an extra level or another character in the game, or they get another section or an additional video or something, like additional content. And then the model has moved on from there, and it's to the subscription model, which is basically an amount per month, which is pretty much what everyone's going down. So LinkedIn is going down that path, and then ones like Netflix are going down that path, and that's kind of here to stay. But it was very hard for the transition to just keep up. By the time you've done the development for the next stage, the market's changed so rapidly. Last year, there was a cryptocurrency called like Ethereum, and it was very popular. It started off about $100, and I think at the end of the year it's about $1,600 for the exact same cryptocurrency. And things like Bitcoin, changed, rapid amounts. So the fact of the matter is, and then even in January it did a lot, had a massive dip, and then in February it sort of went through a bit of a rough patch, and about a third was wiped off the exchange. So what we're learning now is becoming very agile. And agile is basically the big buzzword in all big companies, from banking. I did a banking project only recently, and they're all moving to agile. I think about 74% of the companies now are going agile now. So let me tell you a little bit about what agile is. Is this a remote? So basically, Agile methodology is the way of thinking, and it's basically saying, let's do things in small little tasks, as opposed to thinking about in the next 6 months, or the next year, or the next 18 months. So anytime you build a product, it takes, about 18 months for it to actually hit the marketplace. From the shipping time you come up with the idea, to the time it goes through to the ad agency, to the time it goes through to the distributors, it's sort of out in the marketplace. Does anyone know what Kanban is? Sort of a Japanese word, meaning like a billboard. It was actually introduced by Toyota, and it was a methodology that was done extremely rigorously at the company, and what they wanted to do was to make everyone super productive, everyone super engaged, huge amount of communication, and they wanted to visualize so everyone knew what everyone was working on. Because the problem is, anytime you work at a company, everyone's busy, everyone's like got a lot of stuff on, but there's not a lot of progress that's actually happening. We're not too sure what's actually happening, who's doing what. So they basically come up with this principle, and it was done about 20 years ago, but it's really becoming in the last couple of years, it's coming into. So these are the main kind of parts. So it's basically an umbrella for a few different methodologies. Scrum is a very popular one, which I'll sort of go into a little bit, what Scrum is. And there's a whole way of thinking around that one. Flow, which is what Spotify uses, and they use that very, then you've also got lean, lean startup thinking and things like that, which work around a similar way. But they're all fairly similar. They've each got their own style. Some are used for more software companies, other ones are used for more small companies, like if you're a startup or just got an idea or a small business idea. How do you actually bring it into gear? So within basically a sort of an agile role, you've got the Scrum Master, and a Scrum Master is kind of like your project manager. So if you're running a project, say you've got an idea, you want to build an app, you want to build a brand, you want to do a fashion brand, you want to do something. One of the biggest problems that ever happens if you deal with people overseas or you deal with people in general running one of these, like ideas you have on the side, is there's either a lack of communication, no communication, or bad communication. So you really want to visualize everything and plan it all well. So you've got a Scrum Master who basically makes sure that everything gets done, make sure that everyone's on track. Then you've got a team member, which is just a person in the team. They've got different roles. Depending on, you might have a graphic designer, you have a marketeer, you might have a SEO guy, you might have a web developer. A product owner. Product owner is kind of like your Steve Jobs type of person. He's probably got the most amount of knowledge. He's probably the most informed about what's going on, and he kind of drives everything from colours to branding and all that sort of stuff. He kind of takes control over every single step. Then you've got the stakeholder, and then you've got the users. So this is waterfall. This is how most companies work, as you can see here. The reason why they call it waterfall is because it basically goes from top to bottom, but it can't go back up again. And within that, that's pretty much how a lot of companies used to work. So from the time they have an idea, so I'm using an example with the Harley Davidson bike. By the time the electric bikes become available, they have an idea. From that it goes into the design department, and then into the industrial department, and it goes through all the different layers, and then it goes to the distributors, and then it comes out to the market. What Agile is done into 4 little stages, and they're called sprints. And the sprint is about 10 days. So you basically work out what tasks can be done within those 10 days. And those 10 days wouldn't start on a Monday and end on the following Friday. You do it on a Tuesday that ends on a sort of Wednesday in 2 weeks' time. And what the idea about it is so you've got the weekend halfway through a sprint. And also within a sprint too, it's very easy to keep everyone on track. It's only a short little distance, and you might bring certain people in for a very short amount of time, but they might only be in for 2 sprints. So it's a way to attract people on a very short amount of time, but it's a way to actually get as much things as possible. And certain people work well in that sprint, and other people don't work well in the other one, so you switch teams depending on it. So this is basically a very complex way of showing what Kanban is, but that's actually a bit confusing to a lot of people. But that's basically the principle of it. But this is basically how it works. So you have a whiteboard, and people actually will do an entire whiteboard just dedicated to these three patterns, and then you've got this little section on the side. And this can also be tasked with just general things. It's not just purely, it's not just work related. It might just be for your life goals. It might be for, tasks you've just got on that you've got as, family tasks. There's a lot of companies which use it for, internal projects. They might use it for actually big projects. They might use it for, families that use it for, chores and tasks and stuff like that. But basically, you've got the backlog. So you've got all the ideas that people have, right? So every one of these, big companies or small companies have a lot of ideas, right? There's no shortage of ideas. So in terms of it, you'd write it on a post-it note. So you write what you'd like to do. So someone might say, I think it'd be great if we had a touch login, touch ID login. And they say, oh yeah, that's a great idea. So you stick it in the backlog. Someone else says, I think it'd be really kind of cool to try to test something out into the marketplace. Let's have a go at doing something a bit different. So you basically keep a whole collection of all this at once. So it's a good way to collaborate with your team, with staff, with people from suggestions, from doing consumer research, from talking to people in general. There's a lot of ideas that people have, and it's just a way of actually putting them with a post-it note. Once it's actually been planned out with your team or a group of people, whether you outsource it overseas or whatever, you basically create, these are what are the tasks that we can achieve in the next 10 days. Okay? If it's too big of a project, maybe put it into 2 different sections. So let's say if it was, an app or something like that, we'll think, okay, well that's quite a big project. Maybe we just put it down to let's create a prototype for the next 10 days. Let's break it up into smaller sections. And then basically from the tasks, you'll have a list, and at the very top is the most important, down to the bottom. And then when you bring the task across to the in progress, then you bring an avatar across. So that's your backlog of all the different ideas, all the different suggestions. Then you've got all your tasks from top to bottom. So we say, okay, we've got these 5 tasks to get done. We want to build a website, we want to design a logo, we want to create terms and conditions, and you might want to do something else. You might want to fix something else up, fix a bug on our current website. So we've created a list of all the different tasks, and we put next to it how long it's going to take to do. And then once we actually bring that task across, we slide it across to there, to in progress. And then you have a thing called avatars. So we'll basically assign James to designing a logo. Now, James will basically, James says, okay, look, I think this logo is going to take about 5 hours. So great, fantastic, not a problem. So he basically brings it across, and we assign James, and everyone has different characters. This is a Darth Vader sort of version, so this is a Star Wars version that has been done, but we all know what James is working on, and we know what tasks to be done, and we know what is getting done. So it's a very visual way that anyone can come in and see what's happening. And then eventually the game is to get all the tasks through the progress into the completed task. And then at the end of those 10 days, you go, okay, great, we've actually done really well, we've managed to get it through. And then, a lot of times at the culture of the company, depending on the team, there might be three teams that are working, and two of them have managed to complete all their tasks. So great, then they, pop on out the pizza or drinks or whatever they like to do, and that's a little celebration. Certain companies as well, if you finish on a Thursday, and the company that completes their tasks will basically have a day off the next day. So they go out for drinks or whatever, or pizzas, and they know that they're done the next day. The team that hasn't completed their tasks are coming in on Friday, and they've got to finish the tasks. But it's easy to know who's finished which task and who has kind of let down the team and who hasn't let down the team. So this is a fairly standard one that a lot of companies might use, and it's a pretty sort of standardized sort of one, a very basic one. But at least you'll get the idea about it. Once it goes a little bit more extreme, this is a very extreme one, which was done in a wall of, I think it was an airline company that did it. So that was their whole wall. You can see all the different post-it notes. So all the different coloured post-it notes were assigned to different things. You know, some of the things might be the yellow, might be bug fixing, you know, green might be, you know, something involving like outsourcing to a team, like offshore. Blue might be something to do with the design functionality. But eventually it starts to build up and they've kind of pushed it over. And I think that's over actually a couple of years that they've done it over a much bigger scale. The other one? That's probably the most extreme one there. That's probably the most extreme. Any questions about Agile? Does everyone know what Agile is? Everyone familiar with the Agile methodology? So pretty much Google, Deloitte, all the big banks, all the big companies are now using it. They're doing it as a way to probably make things very visual, make it very clear to see what everyone's working on, to improve productivity, but it's a way of responding to what customers are wanting straight away. Everyone knows what the problems are in the marketplace, and within a 2-week sprint, you can react and respond very quickly within a sprint to get it out to the marketplace, as opposed to in another 6 months. So it's a way to respond very, very quickly to the marketplace. So if something changes, you know, customers are getting big into something, then you can pivot your business very, very quickly, make an update on the App Store, you can make changes to your website, you can make changes to your business very, very quickly and move, you know, in smaller chunks, smaller periods of time.
Would you say some projects are more suited to the Agile methodology as opposed to the waterfall? Like some projects would be more suited to the waterfall?
Yeah, well actually, you know, like Optus went to Agile and they tried it out for a couple of years and now they're actually going back to waterfall. For the reason that a lot of the other companies didn't work in an Agile environment, so you know, although they were moving quickly, they were getting a lot of backups on things, so they were dealing with a lot of ad agencies and other companies that they were dealing with that didn't work in that same environment, so they basically, you know, teed it back. It's usually a lot of software companies use it a lot. It's probably one of the highest. I'd say about, you know, I'd say about 90% of the software companies, but a lot of car companies use it. A lot of other brands, even, you know, a lot of, you know, actually a lot of talk now that, you know, a lot of airlines are using it as well as a way to project manage things as quickly as possible. Me personally, I like it from a startup point of view, or if you're trying to outsource something overseas. I've developed 38 apps from start to finish, and I originally did everything in-house. I used to run an ad agency, used to have staff, used to have all the same sort of normal kind of ad agency sort of business model. And you know, as things were starting to happen, there was a lot of competition that started coming in. Started getting a little bit more aggressive. A lot of people were getting stuff done overseas, but still charging the same prices. So we were basically finding it was getting a little bit difficult. Plus also as well, a lot of developers that I used to hire or get projects to do it. A lot of times, you know, they were very busy, but you're not too sure what they were working on, and there's this thing called project scope where the project just goes way out of budget and it just keeps going, keeps dragging on. We're like, oh my God, is this app going to finish? Is this project going to finish? So we basically put this in as a way to organise our business a lot better. Probably ours a little bit more like that. But at least everyone in our team, it doesn't matter if you work offshore, it doesn't matter if you work from home, it doesn't matter what your environment is. If you're comfortable with this, basically you have a stand-up every day, it's called a stand-up. And basically at the stand-up you say, this is what I was working on yesterday, this is what I'm working on now, this is what I'm basically stopping, this is what's stopping me from proceeding, I'm waiting for the terms and conditions from, you know, someone else, or I'm needing this file from the developer or something like that. So it's a way to have this regular stand-up, regular communication. Also at the end of the sprint, you have a thing called a retrospective. And what that is you look back at the, at the sprint and say, okay, what could we have done better? What took longer than we thought? We think, okay, this project we thought was going to take a certain amount of hours and it took a lot longer. This one here, was a little bit more difficult than we thought. We probably needed to bring in another person to help with the workload. So it's a way to, make it a little bit more efficient. So it probably takes a couple of sprints to kind of get into the system correctly, but I guess from the positive point of view that if you're doing a lot of outsourcing or running businesses on the side, it gets better and better.
All right, so last question, and then we'll need to wrap up.
Yeah, so it's got like a nice linearity to it, like from left to right. How do you deal with tasks that are if and then tasks? So if this one is completed, then we can do this one. Or, a task that, like if you're developing a piece of code, you need, I don't know, to set up the X code or whatever you're going to set up first. Like, how do you deal with that? And how do you kind of make sure that all your team are kind of collaborating equally in that sense? Like,
yeah, so what basically you do with that, so there's a couple of things. It's not just, this is fairly basic one, like a linear one, there's actually round circle ones, there's one where it's actually like a snail, there's many different shapes, sizes of it. But in regards to your question, like if there's a project that's actually requiring something else, you probably wouldn't bring it into the task unless you had the right people on board to do it. So what you might do is you might push it to the next sprint if someone's unavailable or you're needing to wait for a file. So what you'd actually do is put it in the sort of the other file in the backlog at the beginning until all the components are there. Maybe what you almost might do as well, you split the project in half, or you might just say, look, let's just wait on that one and leave it out for this sprint. You can't change anything during a sprint, so once you start a sprint, you can't change it. So if someone has a different idea, they go, you know what, let's make it red, and then we go, all right, let's do it red, and halfway through they go, actually, I think we should do it orange. No, let's just get it out. It has to be red, and the product owner is the person who has control of it, so if they say it's going to be red, it doesn't matter if he's wrong. Like even if everyone knew he's totally wrong, and it's red is the totally wrong colour, it doesn't matter. You just go through at the end of the sprint, and then in the next sprint you go, okay, now let's start to actually think about it. Let's do some more, user testing, and then maybe let's try orange for the next sprint. And you just have to continue through, so it doesn't matter if you're wrong, you'll still push it through. But it's all about really getting everyone from the very beginning to understand what the project is, what you're trying to achieve, coming together and saying to realise that this is the project, this is the vision, this is the tasks that we're working on. And it's much easier to see it in small little bite-sized chunks as opposed to working on this and everyone's just busy working away and it gets very costly. So.
Thank you, Steve.